All right, girls, and anybody else watching this, I need you to make sure that you understand the formula for speed. It's one of our vocabulary words this week. Not only speed, but speed equals distance divided by time. And that becomes extremely important later on. I won't go through the entire story because it would probably take all 15 minutes, but very fortunate that I had a very kind person that I met at High Point who spent some time with me because they knew that I was struggling with, because physics, teaching it to fifth graders was hard because the math was algebra and pre-algebra based and we weren't ready for that. And he took time, wasn't even my professor, to show me this thing called the DST Triangle, which means the D is for distance, the S is for speed, and the T is for time. And it's a very easy, simple way for you to be able to solve distance, speed, time questions every time without having to struggle with it. So again, we're going to be given two, in our questions, you'll be given two variables in speed. You might get speed and distance, and you have to find time. You might have speed and time. It just depends on which factors they give you. But I'm going to show you how to do that because we're not going to do the pre-algebra thing. We are not ready for that. You do need to memorize this DST triangle. And it looks just like this. In the upper portion of the triangle, you have distance. In the lower left portion of the triangle, you have speed. And over here, you have time. So when you are drawing your triangle, you want to think about it just like this, and you always want to put these letters in there so you don't put things in the wrong place. Distance, speed, and time. So your DST triangle looks just like this. Now, in the question on the other page, as I bounce back and forth, says, Miss Cline drove 100 miles in 2 hours. How fast was she driving? So I know, and this is just like what Miss Levy would have taught you. I know I drove 100 miles. I know it took me 2 hours. And it's asking me how fast, which would be speed. So I don't know speed. All right? 100 miles. Where would that go? Make sure you put your D at the top of the triangle, or you will not get any of these right. 100 miles. Is that distance, speed, or time? 100 miles. That is a distance. That is between one point and another point is 100 miles. So the distance would go here. 2 hours. Pretty easy. We measure that in time, right? Hours is time. Now, look inside this triangle. And you'll notice, let's see if I can do this. You'll notice I have 100 and I have 2. But if you really look even closer, I actually have 100 over 2. Do you see that? 100 over 2, which is a fraction. But we also know that you can read fractions as division problems. So this actually reads 100 divided by 2. And 100 divided by 2, whoa, that's not going to do us any good. Divided by 2 is 50. And that 50 is how fast that car that Miss Cline was in is going, 15 miles per hour. So far, pretty simple, right? You plug in the things that you don't know, and you'll notice that these two are over top of each other. When they're over top of each other, you can make them into a fraction, which turns into a division problem, which, if you can do your division correctly, or check it with a calculator, gives you the right answer. So let's check out a different way to do that, okay? Because it's not always, you don't always find speed. But we did on this one. Let me center this up a little bit. Miss Levy was going to the beach because she kind of likes it there. It's 360 miles to the beach, but this time it doesn't tell me the time. It tells me she's driving 60 miles an hour. So let's think about that. The first thing I do when I have one of these questions I go ahead and draw my DST triangle. And if I look at the facts, it is 360 miles to the beach. It's 360 miles, distance, speed, or time. It is a distance. 360 miles is a distance. 60 miles per hour, is that a time or is that a speed?
Speed.
It's a speed. And this time, I don't know time. Now, for me to do it mentally, I always kind of like to cover up the time, kind of get out of my way. So just kind of block it off. What do you notice in this one between 360 and 60? Where are they in relation to each other? Can you tell? Are they over top of each other? Like one's over. So again, we have 360 over 60, which is a division problem. 360 divided by 60 equals 6. That 6 would go where, Sarah Kate? Where's our blank? Time. And if I'm going miles per hour, this is 6 hours. And you're both looking at me like, Mr. Bullens, like, we could probably go back to our seat and do the quiz that they're doing right now. This is kind of easy, right? Do you think it stays that way all the time? I don't know. Let's find out. Example 3, and you know that if Mr. Bullens is putting all of these words up here, things get a little tricky this time, right? Miss Davis is going 75 miles an hour, and she did this for 3 hours. So let's go ahead and draw our DST triangle. And I've got 75 miles per hour, and I've got 3 hours. And the question says, how far had she driven before she got a ticket? She can't drive 75 miles an hour without getting a ticket at some point. What do I not know this time? It says, how far had she driven? Is how far, distance, speed. So this time I don't know distance. But I know 75 miles an hour is speed, and I know that 3 is time. What's different this time?
We're missing distance.
That's right, but where are they in relation to the numbers?
They're beside each other.
They're beside each other.
So you can't make
They're not over top of each other, so it is not a division problem. This time, you multiply. When they are beside each other, you multiply.
So 75 times 3.
75 times 3. I'm going to go ahead and write the answer up here because we've done this one like 700 times this week. 15, carry 1, 21, 225. So she got by with it for a while, but she eventually got a ticket, right? That'd be like halfway to the beach, which it sounds about right. You get halfway to the beach, you get a ticket. That's no bueno.
So your distance would be 200.
225, and this time I know it is miles because she's going miles per hour. Hard? DST triangle is pretty simple, right? You plug in what you know. So again, you have to be careful, especially when you're finding distance. Draw the triangle. I like to cover up what I'm finding. So I typically put my hand or my finger over this part when I'm working because it just helps me to see. I wonder if it'll let me do that. Let me draw. That will definitely not let me draw that. What in the world is that? That's what I want. So typically for me, and just mentally, I like to put something over top of that so that I don't get mixed up. And I know that they're beside each other. That's just what I do. You don't have to do that as long as you do the right thing. Ask yourself on this, and are we dividing? We weren't dividing because it was 75 miles per hour. So in 1 hour, she went 75 miles. In 2 hours, she went another 75 miles. And in 3 hours, she went another 75 miles. And we know that repeated addition is just multiplication. So you guys got that right. 75 times 3 is 225. Feel good about it? All right, I'm going to pause this.